Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. So, how's everybody doing? Good? I'm doing good. Everything is looking up. What can I say? I was, you know how sometimes, you see shows, and when they're out there, they're like, oh, that's so groundbreaking, or it's kind of science fiction. Oh, that's a great like fiction thing. And the other day, I started seeing this. I think the show is maybe like 10 years old. It's called Person of Interest. You know, I wanted to find some, and I never got to see that show back when it came out. Like I think it was 2011, 12, something like that. I never got to see it. One of those things that slips by. And now, of course, this was back when they would have 20 episodes in a season. So, I mean, it's got like 5 seasons. But anyway, the whole premise of the show is that you're being watched all the time. And I remember thinking back then, yeah, I mean, but I never really thought about it that much. In other words, if I would have seen that show back then, I would have said, "Man, this is a great premise because the show it's interesting. It's got an interesting formula." But the whole idea of the show, if anybody's familiar with it, is that basically they have what I think would be termed an algorithm through a computer system. Since of course this takes place in New York, where everybody's being watched and certain people of interest come up to get help. Anyway, I would have seen that back then. I said, "Wow, this is great." But fast forward 10 years, I'm looking at it, I was like, "This is kind of a little bit prophetic here, man." And it's that saying about uh art imitating life, and this is a lot of or fiction or whatever. This is so many things that when you at first blush when you see them, especially if you've been alive for a bit, you're thinking, wow, it's interesting, but then that's it. It stays in the realm of fiction or wow. And I don't know, when I looked at that, I was like, you know what, this that kind of feels like it's right on the money there. And of course, if you live in an urban, versus a rural setting, absolutely. And I'm going to give you for instance here. Let me do my, when I was living in South Florida, Miami, of course, we're talking here in urban versus where I live at. And a few years back, this when they installed the, those the cameras at the traffic lights that basically they were making a lot of money. Whoever had them, whether it was the county or the city, because they were getting snapshots of people taking a wrong turn, and stuff like that, running the red or the yellow, or and I remember a bunch of I think they did away with them in Miami-Dade County. And I remember when that came about like 5 or 6 years ago, because all of a sudden you'd get something in the mail, with a traffic citation, and depending on what it was, it could be a hefty fine. I was like, this is not fair. And out here where I live now, they don't have that. But anyway, and I'm looking at that, and this is like this is not this is not cool. I don't like this, you know, because let's face it, you're always hoping that you know, what is that? Like you're gonna do an illegal U-turn and you look around, make sure there's no cop that's gonna catch you, and you're like, okay. Sometimes I just need to do it. And by the way, I'm a very good driver. I'm a safe driver, but let's face it, everybody does it. But yeah, when you got Big Brother watching you all the time, it's like, I don't like this. And now I'm watching this show and I'm binging and I'm like, God, this is pretty accurate. 10 years later, but it's pretty accurate. But anyway, let's get on to the good part. Yeah, that's my, I maybe today I had my paranoia going on, my whatever. Um, and today's guest, this is the first time this gentleman is here on Stories of the Supernatural. Okay, he is, I know everybody always wants me to bring on a psychic, and that's what he is. He's a medium and a psychic. Okay. His name is Kevin Paul Smith. And I mean, you guys are in for a real treat on this. He teaches others, but let me give you a little bit of background. His website, it's a reflection of his passion to help others and designed to provide education in the field of the paranormal arts through post interviews and individualized remote training, and his Academy of Real Magic with a K at the end. He's an internationally known psychic and medium, and he loves to use his abilities to provide healing, growth through psychic and mediumship readings. In addition, he can help identify your abilities. He gives home cleansing advice, and he, of course, will speak at public events. He conducts paranormal investigations and more. So, as a matter of fact, I'm going to have a link to his website, and we'll give it out at the end for the podcast listeners. But help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Kevin?
Hi there, Marlene. I'm good. Thank
Good.
you. Thank you for having me.
On the contrary, and I wanted, I've mentioned it just before that there's a difference between a psychic and a medium because not all psychics are mediums, right?
Right. But all mediums are psychic.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, is this something that you developed as a child, or what? How did you realize you had that ability?
You know, I've always said everyone has some kind of an ability.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it started when I was really young. I remember speaking to the spirit of my uncle while I'm in my bedroom, on my bed, getting ready to go to sleep. I'm like, why am I doing this? You just, you don't question it. You just kind of have a little conversation and you move on. And as I developed and grew up, I always thought there's something more to me and to the outside in the world than I understand or what we're being told. So that was part of my journey. My spiritual journey is to figure out, who am I? What am I? And in 1982, I read a book called Out on a Limb by Shirley MacLaine.
Yes, I know that book.
And that was like, what the hell is going on here? I love it. So it gave me direction. Like, back then we didn't have internet, and
Mm-hmm.
you just had to read books and then find someone who is actually going somewhere that you might be interested in going to, like a spiritualist church, and then it just went on from there. So it was an interesting journey, and it's always because I've been wanting to find out. I know something is going on. I'm just not sure what
Right.
it is. So it was my personal quest. And it's not like weird things were happening in my bedroom or anything, just me talking and my intuition, something I always, I didn't know it was anything different than anybody else.
Right. Like doesn't everybody know this?
Yeah, it doesn't, it's like whoever sees auras, doesn't everyone see auras? So it's something that I developed. And with a psychic and a medium, you are born with basic skills, just like an athlete or, a musician. You'll be really good at it, but you need to practice. You need
Yes.
to have a good coach. You need to make your mistakes, and you need to figure out where you want to go with it. So everyone can learn how to play the piano with one or two fingers. Some people can learn to do it with both hands. Some people can do a little song, at parties. Others make it a profession. It does. Everyone thinks, oh, you're just kind of born to give
Right.
readings and something. No, it takes hard work. You have to practice. You have to have a good coach. You have to make your mistakes. You have to learn from your mistakes. And it takes years to really fine tune it if you want to be somebody who has a good foundation and you want to be
Right.
grounded. Otherwise, there's a lot of self-training, and that's good for many things. But in
Mm-hmm.
this field, I always say you really need to take some courses. And the best training in the world for mediumship is in England. It's called the Arthur Findlay College. And
Yes.
we call it Hogwarts. The teachers don't like us to call it Hogwarts. But it is. You're literally in the middle of nowhere, and you're there for 7 days, and it's an amazing experience. So it does take training, but everyone has some ability. I always like to help people understand what your primary or secondary ability is, and then train them if they're in my Academy of Real Magic to figure out, okay, now what do I do with it? How do I do a reading? You're not born knowing how to do a reading. You're
Right.
born to be maybe empathic and maybe feel the emotions of other people, for example. That's the beginning, or figuring out what your intuition is and understanding you are getting advanced information either in dreams or just knowing it. So it's a matter of being with the right coach to help you understand what's going on. If something's going really weird, how to turn it off, and all those other fun things.
Right, because I've heard sometimes, especially persons that are mediums as children, sometimes it can get a little bit overwhelming because maybe they're seeing things that they quite don't understand what
Right.
it is.
That's if they're clairvoyant. Not everyone is clairvoyant. And
Okay.
they're seeing clairvoyant is two things. You can either see it in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
as we all typically can, or objectively you see it in the room. And very few people can actually see objectively. Younger people probably more often, but as you grow older, you're not typically seeing. It's a very small percentage. I always say it's wonderful to be clairvoyant. However, you don't get to know or be able to communicate with anything by just looking at it. And it's presenting itself to you, or the way you interpret what your signals are getting. So it's like, okay, we've got to use our other abilities to be able to have a conversation, to be able to figure out its personality, paint the picture, bring them back to life. You can't do it by just seeing. So I say clairvoyance is nice, but you have to use your other skills to bring it all together.
Let me ask you, do you think that each person individually sometimes sees things, whether like you said in their mind's eye, as
Mhm.
certain symbols? Like
Right.
in other words, it means different things to different persons.
It could be a universal symbol, or it could be your own language, your own symbolic
Mm-hmm.
language, and you have to
Yes.
learn what that is. You're not born with that, "Oh, I know exactly what that means." You have to figure it out by practicing and making mistakes and figure, "Oh, yeah, every time I see a yellow
Right.
whatever, that's for my, like, the Long Island medium, that means to me such and such." So you have to learn your own vocabulary of images if you're getting it in your mind, and many of us do. But I always say the most interesting is everyone has clairsentience, is the feeling. That's intuition. The
Mm-hmm.
clear feeling is clairsentience or intuition. My primary is claircognizance. I just know when I tap
Okay.
in. It just drops into my head. As many people will probably recognize, I just knew it, you know, and that's
Yes,
one.
exactly. Yeah, people will do that. Sometimes it's not psychic. And I'm going to say this because I was a hypnotist. As far as the power of the subconscious, sometimes we're not aware that what we know, we do know. How's this? There's
Mm,
other times no, that you receive information that you think, and there's no way I could have known this. But
right.
sometimes we do hold that information subconsciously, and like what you just described, I just knew it, and it's yes, you did know it. It's just that you know it's just buried in your subconscious, and then something triggers it, and then it'll come to the forefront. But yes, but anybody, and I'm sure everybody that's had that experience, after a while, you kind of do this self check, like, is there any way I could have known this? You
Right,
know,
right, you have to prove it to yourself, and
right?
over and over again, like, one of my superpowers, everyone has a superpower, is and it that in $3 will get me a cup of coffee, is I can tell the sex of a child in vitro.
Really?
That is as useless as information as you could possibly get, but that is, I've
No,
learned,
it's not.
they're cognizant. I know, kind of thing. When you go to the, gender reveal parties, it's like, I already know."
Yeah, I don't
Um
need to go to.
It's pretty funny. But everyone, you have to kind of play with those abilities. You think you may have abilities
Hmm.
or special, superpowers. Play with them and figure out: were you correct? Were you not correct? Is it just your active mind jumping in and trying to guess what's going on? That's part of the development of a psychic and medium. We have to be able to take our active mind and our psychic senses and figure out how we process them. How does it feel? How does it sound to us? It's all this getting to know the difference and getting that active mind out of a reading, because the active mind will try to do a full reading and be 100% wrong. And then you learn, okay, this is the way the psychic senses come in. It's softer, it's quieter, it's
Let
not
me ask you,
loud.
do you have moments where you're getting a psychic reading, and because of what you're talking about, I want to, let's say we call it our rational mind, where you're getting this information and part of you is going, no, I can't be that. You know, how could it be
Right,
that?
right. That's typically for beginners. They're like, there's
Right.
no way. That's the
Yeah.
active mind making judgment. And when you
Uh-huh.
develop, you realize this is the way it comes in. This is really accurate. It is weird, but I'm going to go with it.
Right.
And you start trusting yourself, but it does take time. Yeah, we say it takes practice, and you need to have a good coach to take you through it. Otherwise, people stumble their way through learning how to cook or learning how to play the piano, and they
Sure.
have bad habits. A lot of bad habits in my field. A lot
Well,
of
I'm sure yeah, I'm sure you've come across it like, and this is, I mean, I've even heard of people though that have psychic abilities and they get scared of it and they shut it down because they just can't deal with it. They
I
just rather
I
like,
I did when I was developing too. I had to shut it down for a little bit because I was
yeah.
starting to get advanced information on when people died. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't want that." My mother's like, "Don't tell me if you dreamt about me." Um, I won't. So I shut that down and then went on to live my life and then came back and back and forth to and then really came on strong within the last 10 years and developed and then became professional, because it's my passion and it's something that
Right.
it
It's
brings me.
almost like that Cassandra effect. Like sometimes when you know stuff, it's like, man, I wish I didn't know that
Right,
kind
yeah,
of,
you can turn it I always tell people when weird thing you can turn those aspects off just with your intention and confidence.
yes.
So yeah, weird things happen. That's why it's good to have a good coach to say, okay, this is what's going on. Oh, okay, this is why. Because when you develop, weird things start happening, and you don't understand them. Let me, explain what's going on so that you
Let
can
me
make
ask you, when you said that you knew somebody was going to die, was it something you dreamt, or was it something that when you saw them, there was something about them that you're like, oh,
it. I would dream. I would have the
dream?
dream the night that they died. Yeah, if like someone says my mom's going into the hospital, I don't know your
Mm-hmm.
mom, but
Right.
yeah, and she's blah blah blah. And that night I had this dream of this it's very vivid. When it's vivid
Mm-hmm.
dreams, you gotta pay attention. And it was an image of a death scene, whether it be
Okay.
in a casket or whether it be something. It was just a symbol like ooh, and it was very very real and it just thought, oh God, okay, I picked up on it because I was wide open as a developing student, and you just are picking up everything, and it's like, okay, that's wonderful, you can do that. Let's turn that off just with an intention. Like, I don't want to receive that information anymore. Boom, I haven't received it since.
Did you ever have it the other way around? Somebody that everybody thought was going to die, and you kind of caught on and said, no, they're not.
I always said no, I haven't had that. I'm always really bad with that. That's when the active mind is going to jump in.
Right. Right.
So no, I don't go there because it's like I'm not really good with that. That's a medical intuitive is going to be able to pick up on
Right.
it.
Exactly.
And I'm like,
Exactly.
that's not my specialty.
Yeah. But yeah, no, no, it's definitely a touchy. I want to say, especially if it's something, how can I say this? Something, an unexpected death or illness, because when somebody's sick or if they're elderly and you know that they're going to pass on the family or whoever is, they're kind of like, they know that something's coming down the pike. But if that's not the circumstances, it can be a difficult thing that you don't want to
Right.
say, hey,
No, no. I mean, you can have information about negative information about someone coming
right.
in. You just feel like they're going to have an accident.
Mm-hmm.
You don't say, I'm picking up that you're going to really have a horrible accident. No. What you do, either
Good
keep
point.
your mouth shut or you say, I really get a sense that you need to pay more attention and be, really safe in your journeys, or take that extra time or whatever. Or
Right.
you could say nothing. So I don't like to give negative because sometimes I may not interpret something correctly. And then
Right.
I'm going to put something in someone's mind and then they're going to manifest it by obsessing about it.
Sure.
The
They
whole
produce it.
world.
They'll manifest it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we manifest all the time. And I love to teach the proper way to manifest what you want in life. So that's part of the fun I do. Because I'm
So,
learning too.
oh, well, you know what they say, I think we're learning, no, until we're like pushing up daisies, we're
I
learning.
know. And this field, I always say this is they call it a pseudoscience. This is a developing field. Just like,
Mhm.
alchemy was made fun of and people were killed and they didn't understand, and it became chemistry. This is what's going on in this field. The definitions, terminology is kind of mixed up. Everyone's still trying to figure out who they are, where they are, and establish credibility in their specialty. So we're all kind of developing in this pseudoscience or this field of people called paranormal now, or it was
Mhm.
metaphysics, or it's spiritual, or whatever it may be. It's fascinating to be in, and it's also crazy to be in a field that's developing.
Kevin, do you ever as part of a psychic impression, do you ever have physical symptoms or something of what you're picking up on?
Right. Um, I do get sometimes a sense of like if I'm gathering information about a spirit, and we're
Mhm.
taught to get as much factual information of who they were when they were alive,
Okay.
including how they died. And sometimes I will get an impact, not like my head is going through it, but I'll get just a feel of just a pressure, like, and I'll just say, okay, I'm getting an impact. There was an impact, involved with this person's death. I am not feeling that impact. I just
Right.
get like I get a sense of this, or
Right.
or a heart attack. I'll get a sense of something in the heart, but I'm not going to have that heart attack with them. I teach my students, you may be able to. I want you to feel the fire with your hand or the stove. See, there's heat on it. You don't need to put your hand into it and burn. So just get a
Right.
sense of it. That's a training right there. That's discipline. Oh, I get it. I get a sense of this going on. I'm not going to jump in and go, I'm feeling that I'm in this car accident. It's like
Yeah.
dramatic. It's
Yes.
just, poor form, I think. No one wants to have to relive that, when you're trying to bring back their loved one. Our job is to paint them back to life and bring them a reunion. And, going through their death, it's just you just want to this person had a sense of upper chest. I said, this is a heart attack, and then yes, it was.
Right.
Move on. I'm going to bring back the information through personality. Who were they when they were alive? What did they like to do? What did they do with you? What were some of their passions? Um, that's how you paint a spirit back to life. And then you say, yes, that is my mother. Because personalities don't change.
Sure.
Descriptions do. Oh, she was a very skinny woman. No, she wasn't. Yes, she was when she was younger. Stay away from descriptions. We all change, but the
Yes.
personalities never do.
Yes.
So when I'm out doing paranormal investigation, um, I will do the same thing. Who was this person? Sometimes I'll get a name. I'm not really great with names in real life, so it's not my
Mhm.
specialty. But who were they? What was their personality? What kind of work did they do? Who were they? And paint them back to life when I'm connecting with a spirit. Uh, an investigation. It's
Let me
fascinating.
ask you, have you ever been approached by somebody there's a missing person and they kind of suspect this person has passed on,
Yes.
but they're trying to verify if that's the case?
Right. I just wrote down on my little notes to talk. I said, Oh, I forgot missing persons. I've
Mhm.
done some missing persons. We are trained to do missing persons in school as well. And
Okay.
it was this woman, this school teacher who, has disappeared
Okay.
nearby. And I live in Washington, D.C. And she was like, do you know if she's dead or alive or anything? And so I
Mhm.
picked up on the fact that this person definitely has passed away. And she wanted to know where she was, what happened. So I got a sense of the struggle. I got a sense of argument and all this other stuff. But also, you'll find her body near the water. And I couldn't tell any more. I couldn't get any more information than that. But I knew that it was a horrible death, and it was near water.
Mhm.
Uh, but this person definitely died. And then weeks later, they found her body. Um, Near this little lake, and
Okay.
she had been decapitated in all her arms and legs,
She was dismembered, in other words.
totally dismembered. I'm like, what the hell? And there's like this person who did it was, I'm like, no, there was something going on there. And I knew there's something going on.
That's
Um,
a very
you're
that's
like, you just don't go up to somebody and dismember them if you don't have some kind of connection with them.
sure, yeah.
So
That's
I
a
think,
lot of trouble, by the way.
yeah, that
In
was a
case
lot.
anybody knows, dismembering a human body or anything, that takes a lot of trouble
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
yeah.
if you don't like somebody, you'll kill them, but you don't take
Right,
to
yeah.
dismember them. So I had told her there was some kind of lover quarrel. There was some attraction there that went wrong, and then
Mhm.
and it was like so. Once in a while, I do missing persons. Some
You
people
know
are
why I brought that up? I was today, as a matter of fact, I was reading up on some of these really cold, cold, cold cases that, they're being resolved through DNA. But it's
right,
incredible how they had no idea. Sometimes, obviously they never find the killer or the person that, but these were people that were nameless. They were found in weird places. There was nothing there to indicate Um, and now, this is I'm talking stuff like 50 years old, 40 years old now with DNA.
Right.
They're basically, and in some cases they are no closer, of course, 40 years later to finding out the perpetrator. But at the very least, they know who this person was and if this family still left. And
Mhm.
it's incredible, but sometimes that's more common than people think, where bodies are discovered, sometimes especially if time's gone by and police are stumped.
Right.
They have no idea where to go with it.
Uh,
And let me ask you, have you ever had, this is just me. Have you ever had a spirit come to you that's maybe in this scenario? They want you to communicate somehow with either a family member or somebody, or just to tell somebody this is what happened to me?
I have not. That's not one of my special, but a friend of mine is able to do that. But no, I
Hmm.
have not. What I would do is I would put myself into the case and then connect with that spirit energy and see if
Okay.
I could get a download of who this person was, what happened, what was they remember, what was going on, like I did with this this woman who was a teacher. But no, I've not had a spirit just come up and
And let me ask you, that case that you just
hey,
mentioned, they have do they have suspects, or it's like,
yeah,
no, we have,
and they
well,
they found the guy within a day or 2, and
really?
yeah, I
Okay.
was like, because he was caught on video, in that
Okay.
position. Yeah, it was like, yeah, and they said, "Oh, there's no relationship, there's no," it's like a random killing. There's no such thing as a random dismemberment, I think, in my
No, I don't think so. That's very, like you said, it's a personal
yeah,
thing.
it was weird. So missing persons, not my specialty, but I have done it, and as a psychic and medium, um,
Mhm.
you learn, how to tap into these and use your abilities in many different ways. And I always like to tell my students, they're not gifts. These are abilities. You have to work hard to develop them. The gift is
Sure.
when you're able to provide a reunion with someone's, past loved one. That's the gift when you're able to give them closure, in a missing person's.
How about auditory? Do you ever hear anything, or are there?
I do. That's when it's clairaudience.
Mhm.
So I do, and it's usually just snippets and or you hear it. It's like it's kind of weird. It's not like you're hearing a whole conversation and by
Okay.
the way, I said, no, you'll get bits of information through what we call, clairaudience, hearing it. And so what was interesting is that I was recruited for a scientific study with
Okay.
University of Maryland and Harvard University, where they were looking for people who hear voices. And so they had three sets: people who
Okay.
don't hear voices, psychic and mediums who have clairaudience, and the
Uh-huh.
third are schizophrenics.
Okay. That's what I was gonna
I
say.
know, I
People that
know.
hear
They
voices,
hear,
like, oh
they hear
boy.
voices. And so we were put through a whole bunch of tests. I was in an MRI for like
Mhm.
hours playing games with them doing, and it was interesting, little things on your head. What do you call those things that are on your head?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Those
And
that they got like electrodes
yeah,
that puts you
it
everywhere.
was
Yeah.
a great Instagram photo with, all these
Yeah, I
people having
bet.
and they're, still finishing up on it. And I interviewed on my YouTube channel, the scientist who's running the
Let me
study.
ask you something. How were they just looking at your brain, scanning your brain, or?
The way your brain, we would play games and hear tones and all these
Oh,
little,
okay, okay, okay. That's what
they're
I was
looking
looking
at
for.
where in your brain is it lighting up. If
Okay.
you don't hear voices, if you're a schizophrenic, and if you're a psychic or medium. And they
Okay.
say, nothing over here. There's a lot of activity for the schizophrenic, but the psychic medium is just a little bit. It's just a
Okay.
little bit. So it's interesting. They're still trying to figure it out because I guess they want to be able to do analysis through an MRI if someone's really schizophrenic or if they have some abilities.
Right. Well, and then this is the thing though, and I'm thinking, usually schizophrenic, when they start, that is when they're off their meds. You know what I'm saying? That they
Mhm.
start hearing voices, and So I'm thinking, were these medicated? I imagine these were people that were diagnosed with, being schizophrenic. Did they take them off their meds, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
they,
But
the
that's
ones
interesting.
who were never on meds, and I have
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
they didn't know. And
Ah,
when I some of the things I do as consultation, rather than a reading, people will need a
uh-huh.
consultation. Many times it's I have a possession or attachment, and a
Yes.
demonic possession
I
or
saw,
attachment.
by the way, I saw that. I wanted to ask about that because I saw that on your website, your article.
And I was like, okay, let me. talk with you, and it's interesting, and I'll read their energy, I'll gather some information, I'll
Uh-huh.
listen to them, and I'll put together a prescription. Like, do this first, do this second, do this third, fourth,
Okay.
fifth. Um, and the last one is consult, if all else fails, consult a medical professional, like a psychiatrist or
Well, what are they coming to you because what are they describing? Or what is
they
it that they're
they
saying?
feel that there is something possessing them, making
Mhm.
them say things or do things or think things, or they just feel like there's something in them. And 90% of the time, I have
Mhm.
not found anything besides mental illness.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
very, very little, where we actually have some energy, and I have some rituals and some things to put together for them to separate that energy. But 90 plus some people are
It's
definitely
just
having
have
mental illness.
you mentioned something that are you able to see auras?
No, I don't see. I'm not clairvoyant from that standpoint. So no auras
Okay.
there.
And the reason why I ask is I know that some people that have attachments, and this we're excluding here mental illness,
Right.
not a possession, a spiritual attachment, that sometimes basically it's seen in the person's aura. All right. That's why I was asking you if you had ever across something. Let's say, what about the cases that it wasn't mental illness? How did you would how did you know this is for real?
It's so few that I probably have just one or two, where
Okay.
it's a matter of connecting with their energy and reading it and going, okay, and talking to them.
Okay.
It's not dementia, it's
Mm-hmm.
schizophrenia, it's, other things, depression, it could be a variety of things, but it would be typically they're super sensitive people
Okay.
in the sense that they have abilities. And what
Ah,
they're
okay.
doing is they are connecting with, without realizing it, their mom or their someone who've passed on and is
Yes.
trying to connect with them, and so they think it's something evil because they're gathering information, getting a download, untrained download, um,
Right.
from this person who's really their mom trying to give them some comfort or be nearby, or one of
And
their
they just know this is not me. This is
this
not
is
you.
not me. This is something we're going wrong because they're
Right.
untrained medium. So I've
Yes.
found that in a couple of cases, but many times it's like, oh, it's just some sad things going on, and I've written about them or
Okay.
videos and stuff about teaching people like what's going on here. Let me tell you what you can do. But yeah,
Okay.
that's when the super sensitive people who are really undeveloped um, mediums would the ones who are like they're aware of a spirit or spirit energy, and they just say it's just like it's
Let me
something.
ask you, what happens to
Oh,
somebody like that who's psychic? Maybe they kind of know it, but they're really untrained, like what you just described, and they move into a place that's haunted and has got active, intelligent haunting. What
right.
happens? They must go crazy.
Well, they're gonna pick up on it, and they're
Right.
gonna be afraid,
All
um,
right.
and so that's what's gonna happen. The people who don't have really strong abilities or very low abilities,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna go in the same house and go, "There's
Yeah.
nothing
What's the
here."
big deal? Right. Yeah.
Those super sensitive people are going to be picking up on it, and they'll pick up on it differently than I would.
Okay.
It's again, what's their primary ability? Are they going to be more visual? Are they just going to hear things? Are they going to feel things? Um, but they will sense it. They will definitely sense it for sure. I always say, I hear footsteps. Like,
Mm-hmm.
spirits don't need to be making. They don't make any sound when they walk. They don't even walk. It
I was
just
gonna say there's no feet.
there's no feet. So it's pretty funny. It's like a lot of these things, like, yeah, there's this difference between active energy and residual energy. And you're familiar with that difference,
Yeah.
where residual is the energy within the fabric of the room or the space that is on record. It's usually highly emotional, highly dramatic, something that's kind of
Let me ask you something. Same thing here. Let's say this is not an active haunting. This is not a spirit, but let's say this is a place where high emotion, high arguments, or something. There's let's call trauma, whatever. And I do believe that sometimes that imprints in the fabric of a place, but
it
there's no
does.
ghost. It's just a
Exactly.
highly emotional charged. What happens when somebody that's got some type of ability? moves into a place like this?
So I will give you. I did an investigation at, um, Senator McCain was a POW in Vietnam.
Yes,
I
yes.
was in Vietnam. I went to that POW camp
Wow.
to do an investigation. Everyone's walking around. I walked in, and I'm like, and I did a video on that, just a quick video. I stepped outside and said, "This is what I'm finding." Um, there's no active energy there because what goes
Let
once.
me tell you something. We're talking about this. I'm not kidding you. I want to interrupt you real quick.
Mhm.
The hair on my arms is standing up the back. You saw me going like this, and the hair keep going, but it's like, okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it was pretty powerful. I do this around the world. I like to go to these really cool places. So I walked into this POW camp, and it's a museum and everything. But I was like, it was so heavy with residual energy. And the
Mm-hmm.
way I feel residual energy is I feel dizzy. I feel like I'm on a ship walking around, like, whoa,
Okay.
throwing me off. And then I said, okay, there's heavy residual energy. Let me pick up on the emotions that are stuck in the fabric of this place. And so I was just going from room to room, and it was different from being terrified to despair to all this
Right.
really negative energy. And then I just went outside and just kind of recorded it. you know I was on jet lag. We just arrived in Vietnam, so I looked really great. And I just said, this is what I'm feeling. It's residual. There's
Okay.
no ghosts want to stay there.
Right.
So they're going to feel it differently, and you have to figure out, how do you feel residual? You'll sometimes just get the emotion. Sometimes you'll
What did they have in there? Like items that were there in the camp, or what
it,
was in the
it
museum?
was it was they had some statues of prisoners against the wall or whatever. um,
Mm-hmm.
these are the rooms that people were locked up in, so it was in the
Oh,
fabric of the concrete, in the floor, in the ceiling,
oh,
in the space. So it was, and I really like, Jesus Christ, I'm dizzy. And that's when I have stepped in. I'm not jet lagged. I am really in heavy
yeah.
residual energy. and
Yes.
and when we went to Cambodia, it was different. I didn't feel the dizziness because I opened up, as I always do in these magical places around the world. It's like, okay, I'm opening up. I like to get a tour guide from
Okay.
that era in spirit, come to be my tour guide.
Okay.
It's like, okay, this is who I've got. And so when I was in Angkor Wat in Cambodia,
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting to. I had two. I had a Hindu priest and a Buddhist monk.
Okay.
And I was just like, okay, I've got two here. What's going on? And there was this little brief conversation to me, from each one of them. And it was really fascinating to say. The Hindu said this place was much more beautiful when we built it. And then I don't know how many hundreds of years later, the Buddhist community came and overtook and threw out the Hindu, and now it's theirs, and it's been this way for I don't know, 1,000 years or whatever. So
Right.
they're kind of arguing through me, but I get a sense of these energies are still present there, kind of still warring and fighting. It's like this
No,
hatred.
but I mean, Angkor Wat is huge.
It's
It's a very
beautiful.
large,
So
that was a
I put it together. I did a like an audio recording of like what was going on and everything right afterwards, and then put a little video together on my YouTube channel as well. So I've just got back from Mexico, so I've got to do they call La Isla de las Muñecas, or Doll
yes,
Island. I was
yes.
there at Doll Island. I'm going to do a little something on Doll
Well,
Island.
how was that? How was that? Was that like it's just a very unusual place. How's that?
I'd never heard of it. I was like, oh, this
Okay.
is like Doll Island. I think this is kind of weird. So um, I went there. I said, I don't want a tour of it. Just let me walk and just
Okay.
get a download. And so I don't do the spoiler on it, but I do have a really good download of what I picked
Okay.
up. And so I will put it together. But it was fast. There was a lot of energy to read,
Okay.
um, of the original guy who started it to the family members who are now
Yes,
running.
I think the family members have carried on or
Right. So I have a lot to say. And, I'm very opinionated. I'm the no bullshit kind of psychic medium. So I have a lot to say about this Doll Island. Would I sleep there? Sure. I have no problem sleeping
do
there.
you believe that, which is part of their, I don't know, that spirits, whether they're human, non-human, can take possession of an inanimate object such as a doll. Is that possible?
No. I say it's all we all have opinions on this stuff.
No,
Well,
no,
I
no, no,
say
that's fine because
no.
I, I,
What you're doing, I would say sometimes you would be picking up on the energy of the owner of the doll, and that's psychometry. Like if this doll
yes.
was really important to, Mary
Mhm.
Sue, and now you're picking up at her residual. It's not like Mary Sue is like, I'm gonna dive in there and hang out in this doll, but you're picking up on the residual energy within that psychometry, picking up an object. So that's what I say. There's no, you know,
How about
accident,
something that if it's something that's created, not a factory thing, in other words. Do you believe,
handcrafted.
right, that the creator imbues it with whatever?
Absolutely, yeah, that energy that they're making with it. I mean, like if it's a
Yeah,
watch, just by wearing it and looking at it, you're
right,
putting your energy into it. By actually making it, absolutely, you're putting your energy into it. Not sure how, but that is a great object for a psychometry. And that's what I
right.
start training, beginners with. Let's pick up an object and give me a download on it. And whether it's the original owner or the new owner, doesn't matter.
Mhm.
You'll learn, and working with an inanimate object, you're not going to be afraid to sit in front of somebody and do a reading. So that's how we start with psychometry. So yeah, I say no, it's your residual energy in those items, not an active spirit, and
Right,
you'll pick up on it if you're sensitive.
right. Because I think of, then the reason why I say this is that I've heard of people that do collections. I don't want to say they're archaeologists, but they bring back and they have collection of original artifacts, something that was made by an individual.
Right.
And they every once in a while, in other words, whether it was, how can I say this? I'm not talking about whether somebody intentionally puts anything into it, but what their frame of mind was when they were creating it. I want to say sometimes maybe becomes part of it.
Right,
And that's
sure.
why,
That's the residual energy of that person is what's rather than a part of their spirit energy. There's no reason for the spirit energy to be imbued into an inanimate object. So I would say their residual energy. That's my opinion. Their residual energy is they're into it. It's going to be not part of them once they pass on. That that residual energy is still there. That doesn't mean it's not part of their spirit, but it's part of their emotional act, crazy energy when they were doing it. That's the way I look. That's just pure psychometry.
right. When you were in Mexico, by any chance, did you get to go to any of the, I went many, many, many years ago, which was the Chichen Itza, which is the one out in
Yeah, that was I've been to that's Merida and the
Merida, yes.
that's that yeah, that I went to in the 80s and did that
Mhm,
walking around as well. But this time we were in Teotihuacan
mhm.
with
Yes,
me. They call it the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon.
yes.
And I opened up there and I got a little, a very I call it a little tour guide of that time.
Okay.
Give me the download. What's going on? And it was so funny. It was just like this place didn't look like this at all.
Right.
Because it's been mounds of dirt to everything, just kind of
Yes.
reconstructed. They're like, no, it does not look like this at all. This is the way these places look. This is what was happening here. That's the kind of thing I pick up on. It's not like a full length conversation for hours, but I'll get bits and pieces as I'm talking. Um, and it's really fun. I love to open up and have an authentic tour guide from back then.
Right, and I know that a lot of these, well, now they're ruins, but they were, when they were active, they were colorized. In other words, they were painted, they were different colors. They weren't the stone color that you see there.
Right, yeah, I mean, that's what this energy was telling. This doesn't look like anything. It's just basically what we'd see if you see the shell of a building,
Mhm.
like if of a modern building. It's like, "Oh, this was the Empire State Building. Oh," but all we're seeing is this structure, and that was all that was recreated because no one knew what it's like, yeah, it's like, "No, this is not it. That's kind of a basic shape, but that's not it." So they did a pretty decent job with some things, but most things were just way off, and except the big pyramids were there, and they have, they're too big to.
Well, now I don't know if you heard, like, about a month ago, they, with now all these satellites, they discovered this huge, what they consider this huge city in the Amazon jungles, like
Yeah, they have this great
huge.
radar. I think what the radar is called, but it goes over and it just kind of goes right through all the trees and all the
Yes, that God
vegetation.
knows it's been overgrown. It's in the jungle, but how
Yeah,
old it is. But
I just
yeah,
I find it fascinating. It's fascinating.
yes, because and I you think about it, and the manpower that it takes to build these, the pyramids or any of these things. Um, I think that in a time where, and I'm going down the thing of, like ancient aliens. How did they do that? How did they build
Yeah,
these things?
no, it's crazy. I mean, there's a lot of intelligence, that we think, oh, we're much smarter,
Yes, thank you.
no, we're not. We just have different technology, which makes us lazier and smarter in the sense that it's things more convenient for us. Where
Sure.
people worked hard and they were much more in tune with their environment and their
Yeah.
abilities. They had more ability. It's like natural stuff. Yeah, it's pretty
Yes.
crazy. It's
But
pretty.
the motivation to come up with overcoming the challenges of what they knew or didn't know. It was like, okay, this is what we got. And yeah, there's a quarry that's about 5 miles away that's got these huge slabs of what we need. How are we going to get it over here? And they did it. And then you're like,
They did,
how?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, they did it with the technology they had. They were like, "That's how we do it. What's the big deal?"
Yes.
They'd be like, "What's the big deal?"
That's what I like about
It's
going to some of these
done.
places. If I stand there and I'm like, and I'm not an engineer or an architect by any measure, but I'd be like, how did they do this?
Right, right, right. Because we're like, they had primitive tools. Well, we don't sure all the tools that they had, but they had manpower and using logs and all sorts of stuff to move. And like, oh, that's how they did it. So
So
it's
when you go to these places, have you ever had, like you talked about, those dreams that something or somebody comes to you in a dream and you have like how can I say it? Like a 3D vision of what it was while you were asleep, like when
I
you're
have
asleep?
I have no, not through my dreams, I don't, but what I will do is I will know and get a sense of what it used to look like. I'll get a sense of
Okay.
I don't see it in like I would see like in a recreation on something on TV. I get a sense of, wow, I see the sense of a taller structure with a particular kind of roof. So I'll see that in my mind's eye.
Okay.
That's the way I would interpret it rather than going, I'm seeing it real time while I'm there. And then typically, I turn everything off when I and don't want to, be a psychic and medium. It's like you can turn it off, folks. You don't have to be walking around like, being affected
Let
by
me
it.
ask, have you ever had a situation where you have a dead person, let's call it that, that insists like, I need to talk to you? Have you ever had that?
No, because I set boundaries.
Okay.
And it's when I'm closed, I'm closed.
All right.
When I'm open, and I can pick up on that once in a while. But mine usually is very specific. I'm going to do a reading in this building, or I'm doing an investigation, a paranormal investigation, and
Hmm.
that's when the energy will come forward. But no,
Okay.
I don't allow that just in my daily life. If I'm going to the grocery store or whatever, it's only when I
Right.
open up, and that's part of training. It's like, okay,
Right,
give me
because I'm
a moment.
thinking, you got one of these dead people that wants to say, because to them it's urgent and they're picking up.
Right.
He can hear me, see me, whatever.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
it's
right.
like,
There are some mediums who, that will come to them in their dreams, and
okay,
they'll try to help them process them. That's not the way I operate, because we all operate differently, I tell people. Everyone
okay,
does it a little differently, but no, I don't have any problem with that, but I do when I go to a place, I open up, then the spirit will come forward. Then that energy will come forward, and I will say, okay, I'm aware of a man. Let me give you the download. Let me see if I can get the download here. Like when I went to investigate at Gettysburg Battlefield,
okay.
I had no idea when I was like, we were on the way, like, let's stop for lunch, and like Gettysburg, isn't it kind of famous? And so I asked somebody, is there paranormal investigators that? Oh yes, I said, where did they do it? So it was down. My friend and I walked into the fields, and I said, you go that way, I'm going to go that way, and we both are psychic mediums. Get your downloads, and then we'll come back and compare notes. And then I did a
Mm,
video on. I opened up, and then those spirits came forward to tell their stories. It was four spirits from that time. It was fascinating. I was like, wow. And then I had to do an audio afterwards. Okay, this is this is the first one. This is the second one. This is the third one. So it was a beautiful sunny day, and that's when I opened up and said, okay, and then they'll come forward. They just don't
Right.
come forward and go like, I'm eating lunch, leave me alone. No, that's not because they know better. I'm like, no, I'm turned off. I want to enjoy this.
Right, because the people don't realize in Gettysburg, there's a Union cemetery, but there was a lot of soldiers, mostly Confederates, that were left in the field that they basically that was their final resting place.
Right. Yeah, there's trauma, and I picked up on a couple of those who survived, those who were behind the scenes, those who died, in that area. It was like it was pretty strong. It was full of residual energy. And I
Mhm.
opened up to gather, I invited the energy, not like they were sitting around going, okay, we can't leave here. I invited them down, those who had a connection, and they gave me their stories. It was fascinating. I was like, wow.
Yeah, well, you hear a lot of people that they visit. Sometimes they see this looking for, and other times unwillingly, but they almost witness like a battlefield moment, like the whole thing, horses, men,
Right,
noises.
right. Smell, sometimes, you can get a
Yes,
smell. Some people
yes.
are good at smelling and tasting. Um, yeah, so yeah, everyone is going to perceive that place a little differently. And that's
Hmm.
the beauty of because we're all unique. Psychics and mediums are all unique, just like people who are out in public. We all are going to perceive it a little differently. And your primary and secondary ability is going to pick up things that the other person, no, I'm going to get it more of a visual. I'm going to get a more of a sensing. I'll just know. It's all so different, but we still are doing the same thing. We're gathering we're tapping into that energy. And when people say they see this spirit of a soldier walking across, we caught it on film. It's residual energy. It can be caught on film. It's
Right.
Why would anyone be hanging out there? It was a traumatic. The spirit moves on. This is a different vibration here. So that's the way I look at it.
Well, and if you think about it, let's face it, if you're a soldier and you're in wartime, you know at any moment you could die. This was you in war.
Right. And where do you want to go when you die? To your loved ones, to where
Sure.
you're from, and go,
Right.
to those people you have an emotional connection with, a link, an emotional link, an energetic and emotional link to your loved ones. So you'll go there as part of because you have that connection and be pulled right back to it. It's like this is a field. Why do I need to do I stay here?
What about when people you do readings for people
Hmm.
that will a spirit show you something that when you relay it, that's like confirming to the person that's there that this is who they that it is that person.
Right, right. It's called evidential mediumship, which
Mhm.
means I'm going to I get the personality. Who were they when they were alive from a personality standpoint? Or they can
Okay.
give me a sense of what their hobby was. What's kind of work did they do? All that kind of evidence of who this person, and even what did this person do with you? What was your connection? Why is this, person coming to you? They had a connection to you. And sometimes it's like, I don't want to talk to that person. Or
I
no,
wonder about that
yes,
sometimes.
yes, and it's like, wait a minute, they all come, they're not, they've a bit of change, your spirit changes, your life here on earth and all is
Mhm.
differently. You now have time to reflect. It's a more pure energy, and so yeah, they typically come to apologize or to say I'm sorry in a different way.
Because you know what? That's and I'm glad you clarified that because sometimes people think that, sometimes a person dies and there's relationships are rough when they die. In other
Horrible,
words, you know
horrible.
what I'm saying?
Oh, I do, because I pick up on them and go, "Ooh, this woman was not very nice," or "This
Right.
one was abusive. This one was physically abusive." I mean, oh, horrible stuff. And
Or
I'm
they were
giving
just unpleasant people, maybe when they were alive.
they were not very nice. And that's part of the evidence of who they were when they were alive.
Right.
They're a little different now. And so why did they come through? Oh, and I get a message. Once there's yeah, that's definitely my mother, my father, my brother, my sister,
Right.
whatever it may be. The hardest ones are the little kids.
Yes. That's gotta be difficult.
Ooh, yeah, and we learn, the little 2-year-old just doesn't waddle up, in a spirit form. They don't even know how to speak. So we learn
Mhm.
if there's this child, have the grandmother who's passed bring it forward, bring the
Okay.
child forward within her arms, so there's a different way of presenting. And then you can gather some information of who this little 2-year-old was when he or she was alive, because that's the parents want to know, that the
Right.
child is safe and all, because
Right. I imagine as a parent, that's gotta be one of the most difficult things. You want your child to
horrible.
know that your child is okay.
Those are the toughest ones to read, because the parents are just sobbing the whole time.
Yes.
You're like, oof. And then this one particular one, I remember, like, like, how did the child, I needed to get evidence, and I got, a Disney song, like
Okay.
from The Mermaid, Under the Sea,
Mhm.
that cute little song,
Yes.
Under the Sea. And I was like, oh shit, why is it? She had drowned in the pool.
Oh,
That's how I got that.
wow.
I didn't see the actual suffering.
Right, but
A
for a
lovely,
minute there, I was gonna say that was her favorite song.
yeah, it was like, it's like, oh,
Okay.
that's how I got the fact that this child died in a swimming pool, fell in and died. No one was attending it.
Mhm. And the reason why I say this was I remember when my children, which are grown, but when they were kids, they would like the Disney movies, they would watch them over and over and over again. They knew all the little songs. That's why I was
Yeah,
thinking,
and I'm like, why am I getting this Disney song?
right. And
And it
I
was
thought,
a way of
oh,
gathering me, of getting a download on how this particular child passed. But I got a
that,
personality and everything. I couldn't
hmm
get much more, but they just wanted to, get confirmation that the child is with, the grandmother or the loved one that came through, and is not feeling any, harm. How, just all these, typical questions when you have someone who's passed that you love.
sure, absolutely.
You teach students not to go down that path and start wailing and crying with them, because you can't
Let
do
me
your
tell you something. I personally, I don't know how you do. That's a good question because I'm kind of one of these sympathetic criers. Or empathetic criers, like
right.
especially over something like that. I think I'd bust out
Yeah.
crying. I'd be like,
Because
oh,
if you start going down that path with them, you're gonna lose connection, and there you go. You've just
yeah,
hung up the phone, and it's like, well, you still got some work to do, and it's hard to then pick up the phone while you're emotional, and you've already disconnected from the spirit. So that
hmm
comes with the training and discipline of, okay, this is difficult. Yeah, I feel this person, and I feel bad that this person had such a horrible life, whether it be anybody. Just, again, feel the heat on the fire. Don't put your hand into it. Acknowledge it. You've got a job to do to gather more information and then provide a message. If you get caught in the middle and lose connection, okay, there you go. You just hung up the phone and now there's no message, and you're going to try to pretend like you're trying to dial them back. Yeah, so
right, right. And I
so
could see like all of a sudden, yeah, you're not.
you feel
I,
horrible. You feel horrible,
you're
but you can't let yourself go
right. You
there.
gotta like.
Stay connected with that energy. Okay, that happened. Let's go into their personnel. Let's, don't stay with it so much. Just, again,
Do you ever get the question of from parents? Let's say that scenario where they say, "Will this child ever come back? This child's spirit come back in another child?" Do they ever ask you that?
no, not typically. Not
But you
typically.
know what I'm asking, like
Yeah, yeah.
that
Will
they
our next baby have
right,
the spirit of this child? Yeah,
right,
I'm like, I don't really have. I don't think I've had one.
okay,
Maybe one. I'm like, that's hard to answer. I'm just
okay,
working with the spirit of this energy now. Like,
okay.
okay, you're telling me to, asking me these other questions. It's, I don't know. I've never said, yeah, absolutely. This is like, okay.
Right.
Animal communication is really weird too.
Oh, you do animal communication.
Well, I learned how to do it. I've been bitten by 2 dogs in my life, so I'm not really loving animals when I was little. But yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
interesting to gather information from animals who don't speak, but you can get personality, you can get experiences in life. And some of my friends specialize in animal communication.
Uh,
Which
let me
is
tell you
fun.
something. I've always been an animal. As a matter of fact, I've got 8 dogs
Oh, yeah.
lying down underneath me somewhere all
And they
around me.
all have personalities, right?
Oh, of
Different
course, of
personalities.
course. And
So,
my
so
husband, every once in a while, he'll talk to the bird. He goes, "God, I'm doing what you do. You're talking to the animal. I'm doing it too." And I'm like, I mean, okay, but
it is
when you're an
fascinating.
animal person, you do that. It's not like you're
Right,
expecting,
right,
but
right. So that,
but
again,
still,
that's not my specialty. Uh,
yeah, but it's one of those things where we give them like and I hate to say it, but animals do have personalities. I know there's people going out there, okay, Marlene, but yes, animals have personalities. Even, you know, I mean, I have chickens, I have birds, I have dogs, I've had cats, and they have personalities.
Mhm.
And some of them that they, not like the Dr. Doolittle kind of thing, but um, yeah, and I know that like they'll say that dogs will pick up on your cues and stuff, like facial cues on to what you're thinking. But there's after a while, I want to say that we do develop a psychic whatever with our animals.
Yeah, you have this energetic connection.
Yes,
You actually have an
yes,
energetic and emotional connection with these animals. Right, absolutely.
yes,
They
yes.
feel it differently than you do, but yeah, there's definitely an energetic
Now, I'm not saying that they're like, but there's something there like that you gel with them and they with
Sure.
you, and because let's face it, I talk to my animals. It's not like, because there's people that have animals, but they're very, how can I say it? They're more like a utilitarian kind of relationship. Whether it's a guard dog or they're a
Mhm.
cow, it's like milk it, eat. I'm
Right.
not that kind of person. So yeah, I get it. I understand totally. But what's been your experience with animal psychic moments?
The psychic is we use our psychic skills to connect with the living animal, and then medium
Okay.
to pick up on those who've passed away. And it's interesting to get for me. I don't know animal types or anything, but sometimes one will come through. I feel like this jumping energy, and I'm like,
Okay.
and I'm not looking to be an animal communicator during this reading, but there's this animal that has popped in, and of course that usually
Okay.
makes the person bawl, when you start getting
Yes.
into details. I'm like, what? I thought it's a little boy, it's a male. It's like, yeah, it's a male animal. And so
Right.
it is fascinating how people really just
Oh, yes.
are so attached. I mean, they're not
Yes.
crying for their mother or their father who passed on, who've come through, but this dog, there's this like crying and all.
Yes.
Wow. So
Yes.
it does. It comes through differently. The energy is different, and we learn
Yeah.
how to bring in that energy. Um, and,
Yes.
and you train, and some people are really good at it. Other people are better at, humans. Other people
Mhm.
are better at missing persons. They can tell you exactly where, these people are located, on a
Right.
grid and stuff. So with these skills, there are so many areas of specialty. And you can't really put us all together in one, you know,
Right, because let me tell you something,
whole.
and that now that you said that missing person, people don't realize that missing person doesn't mean dead.
Correct.
Sometimes there's moments where, and I'm gonna go with the maybe younger, no child obviously, but even where missing is, where are they? Are they
Ran
close
away.
by?
Yeah.
Or are they not even? We're not even getting into are they deceased? Even though everybody always thinks that, it's like where do we look? You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
That's a
Um,
that's a great skill to have. And police use some people, they have them on file that are proven track records of helping them. So
don't
that
you ever have because do you ever have those police departments that come through the backdoor channel like I will deny. Can you help us out? But I'll deny you helped us out.
no, no, I'm not on one of their radar. That's some people, and I know a couple people who do help out.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's like you have to have this relationship, and it's hard to develop a relationship because
Oh,
they're
sure.
not really official. It's not official, but yeah, it's a
Well,
very valuable skill to
I
have.
think that besides and with good reason, sometimes I think besides the fear of like, oh, you got a psychic, it's let's face it, if the psychic resolves it, what does that make you as a police officer look like, or the police department? Hey, you guys need to
Mhm.
solve this case, and you bring in a psychic, and they
Yeah,
do.
yeah, they're like, yeah, that's not all police departments do that, I'm sure. But,
No.
if there's who are really specialized in missing persons, and they're really good at it, and they have figured out that they're good at it by trial and error, or they did one case and it really turned out well, and they did another one, it turned out well.
Hmm.
You don't know until you get out there. I always tell my students, get out there and do a little bit of everything and figure out where your specialty is, just like we are doing it in real life. Where are you best at in life?
Do you have as a psychic? Do psychics have? I don't want to say a good and a bad day, But are there days that you're more psychic than others?
I say our energy is affected by who we are for that day,
Okay.
because this is all mental work. So if you're hungover, and I've tried to do a reading when I was hungover, not doesn't work. Doesn't work. If you're fatigued, and you say, I tried it. I got to see, and like, no,
That's
this is
great.
really mental. So it didn't work. It was really a bad reading and it was like, I was like swing and miss, swing and miss. I'm like, oh Jesus, that's what's going on. So yeah, some days you're on, some days you're not on, and it's just simply because of our mental state. Are you
Okay.
fatigued? Are you upset? Are you emotionally distraught? Are you
Okay.
depressed now? Did you just get out of a relationship? Did
Right.
someone dump you? That's going to affect your
Right. It
ability to
bleeds
make it.
over into
It does,
your.
because this is all mental. All this work is mental work. We're nothing but what's in our brain, and part of the psychic senses is in our brain somewhere. Quantum physics is
Yes. Now
right
they're discovering a lot of things.
there. It's all coming together. But yeah, if we have a bad day, just in general, because we all do have bad days or don't
Sure.
feel well, if you're sick, no, you can't. You really can't do a very good job. You could do a
Yeah.
shitty job. You're
Yeah.
not going to be 100% every time.
You mentioned that when you were developing that you attended or you were mentored by somebody that was in the oh my God, this church,
Oh, the spiritualist churches.
spiritualist church.
Right, yes. That's where you typically go to get some basic training.
Okay.
Back in the, you know, last century was typically.
Right. I've been to Lilydale, and here in Florida, we
Yeah.
have Casadega,
Yeah,
which is
I know people at those places, trained with a
yeah.
few of them. Yeah, that's where it was back in, the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. That's where you would go to, and they would have little training sessions. Much better now. The
Mhm.
training is much better now than back in the 80s when I was being trained. Because what we did is, for spiritual development and psychic development, is we would go into the basement, and the teacher, who is the psychic medium, who's running the church as well, would go in there. We'd sit in a circle, lights out. It was a full-on seance with channeling coming through, with different voices coming through. Totally old school. That's old school. And the lights come on, and you're like, okay, I've heard from many different voices, these wonderful brains from past. It's like, okay, you get over the fact that it's being channeled through this one person with different voices coming through them. Now it's done differently. Everything is done in the light, because when you turn off the lights, people try to take advantage, and it just, like,
Right, right. And this is what I was
everything,
gonna ask you. When
yeah.
you channel, because you hear, like you said, the older ones, the channel is like the psychic is basically leaves and the vocal cords are taken over by the spirit. Does
Allegedly.
okay.
That's
I
that's
didn't
like
say that.
allegedly. I mean, this man is a phenomenal psychic and medium.
Okay.
Channeling, they taught back in the olden days, you had to have different voices coming through to make it look like it was different people. It doesn't necessarily have to have different voices. It's just, it's hard.
Right. I mean,
They take charge of the vocal cords.
right.
We've taught to allow the spirit to really come in and try to take over the chords, or to kind of.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely old school, and very old school. So that's something that Lilydale and, you know all those folks have trained and learned or been part of as well. But it's not the thing this now. It's more like, do it in the
I'm gonna
light.
tell you something. I don't know. Spiritually, I think that would be dangerous. That's just me. To me,
Right.
I'd be like, I wouldn't want. No.
It's weird. It's really weird to say, I've got this woman inside him, and it's like your
Yeah.
active mind is like, this is weird. I can't
Right.
let go. And then it kind of affects your ability to connect with that spirit, like, because you're allowing
Yeah.
it to come through I can get just as much information by not allowing it to come in and
Right.
like that vocal cord, to come in and really feel them. I can feel them without them entering inside of my body, kind of a thing. But that's old school. It's really old school. And I was really fortunate to have seen that and part of it back in the 80s.
Yeah, because aren't those psychics also supposed to have something what they call a control, which was a spirit that kind of acted like, for
Yes.
lack of a better word, like a bouncer,
It's the
you know?
bouncer, and it's usually a little kid. Instead of,
Really?
instead of a psychic, they're mediums, because they're channeling the spirits of
Uh-huh.
of dead people. The psychics are only just picking up the energy of the living people. So the mediums have got, they call them the gatekeepers. They were the gatekeepers.
Okay.
And it'd be
Right.
a little boy or a little girl voice, because this is the way it was trained back in the early 1900s. That's the way it came through. And they would
Hmm.
kind of like, okay, now we've got somebody else coming in, and now I'm okay. They like the chatter before the next guest comes on. It's something a little funny. It's just like, yeah, it's kind of silly, but that's the way it was, back in the day. The Fox sisters,
Yes.
tapping. One, that's two knocks. It means yes. Oh, that's
Right.
another two knocks. Like, 'cause they figure out the girls are kind of playing at first back in the day, and then like anybody, you can develop certain psychic and mediumship skills. Maybe they developed them, and they became pretty good mediums. They didn't have to do the okay, Betty, knock on the when you hear.
Right. Well,
So
and back then also they would produce this ectoplasm from weird places in their body. It'd be like, oh, I
yeah,
want to.
yeah, yeah. Nothing like they found so many times
Yes.
cotton
Yeah.
and all sorts of things. Again, in the dark, I could pull some. I had some cotton under here. I'm gonna make it look like there's a ghost in front of me.
Right. Yes.
It's
Yeah. A
all
lot of
about
them
the
were busted.
drama. Yeah, and the layer busted. So there was a big credibility issue back in the
Sure.
last century. So that's why do it in the light. Don't
Yes.
screw it up by pretending the table is moving or there's a spirit informing in front of you. In the dark, you can't see anything, so you see this white ghost. No,
Right.
they had some what do you call that material, like cotton or whatever, and they're pulling
Let
out.
me ask you, what do you think then about seances? When the thing where everybody holds hands, is that does that really work, or or is that just
It's
a
it's
parlor
well,
game?
it can be depending on what's going on. If the table is supposed to be moving while your hands are on the table, then it becomes a parlor game. Like,
Okay.
oh, everyone wants to be scared. The key is the seance is supposed to have a medium who is supposed to
Right.
be connecting with spirit. So that
Mm-hmm.
person should be able to, in the light or the dark, be able to say, I have this woman here. It's going to describe who this personality, what they were who they were when they were alive, and all these details, and say who can take that. Oh, it's that person over there. That sounds like my mother. Give me some more information. Okay, that's the
Okay.
way it should be done. Yeah, the parlor games were the big deal back in the last century, and
Yeah.
they got busted. 90 some percent got busted, and so now we're all trying to figure out, okay, how do we do it differently? Do it in the light so that there's no hanky panky going on. And
Right.
what we do, we get taught in school to stand in front of a group of people, usually the classroom, and do it. You're doing the seance. You're picking up on a spirit. I've got this mother here. I picked up on a woman who had been hit with an impact. And this person was really beautiful. She liked to paint her nails a lot. She always liked to, and like, okay, who can take that much information? Four hands went up. I've got to get more information out there.
Right.
And then I found out it's this woman over here who could definitely take all of it. Her daughter was hit by a train. Um, and so,
Are you serious?
yeah, that's how
Okay.
the impact. I got the impact. I was like, I didn't get hit by the train, but I felt some impact.
Right.
Like, okay, impact, um, just by something on my head. And yeah, that was a seance in the light with people in front of me.
Right.
You do it around the table, be the same concept. In the dark,
Okay.
no, you get all
It's
sorts.
just more for effect then than
It is more
everything.
for effect, like the spook houses. Everyone loves to be scared.
Yes.
So I did it.
Right.
I did a YouTube show on the revealing the Ouija board.
Oh, let's hear it.
Yeah,
What?
it's on my I did a YouTube. It's called Kevin Paul's Mystical Quickies. I do a show in 10 minutes or less because everyone's attention span is about 2 minutes.
Uh,
And Mystical Quickie, I'm going to teach you something or give you something within 10 minutes, and you're going to be fascinated. You'll learn about it. I'll pull the curtain back and call bullshit if I go, if I think it. They're called Mystical Quickies on my YouTube channel. I'm working on one now called Seance. Interesting you
okay.
brought that up.
All right.
I actually do one during a paranormal investigation. I sat down and opened up. Boom. What does seance mean? It means communication, sitting down. So yeah, I love doing that kind of stuff.
Right. Exactly. And let me tell you something. It's because and then there's times that you see and I'm talking here of the Hollywood version where you see some psychic that gets jumped by some spirit and is taken over, and is that does that really exist, or is that just a lot of Hollywood?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, if a psychic or medium, it would be a medium in this case because
Right.
connecting with spirit, is so undisciplined and have not protected themselves with intention or a ritual, and they're really empathic, they're going to feel that energy, that personality, that the
Okay.
intention of the spirit, and feel that they've been jumped. When in fact they're
Right.
just open to it, they picked up on it. It's like, yeah, he jumped on me. Okay, well, that's the way you connect with energy. That's the way you are so sensitive that you feel it. You feel the automobile accident. There's no need to feel that automobile. There's no need to feel like that entity is in your space. You can always say, get out. You have more power than the entity, the spirit, energy. So yeah, it's a little bit of both. It depends on the situation. I know for TV, I was on a reality TV show many years ago, so I know
Mhm.
pull the curtain behind back, and there's the Wizard of Oz. It's a little different than what you're seeing up here. So yeah, it has to be made for an hour show. You have 40 minutes, and they go to these places and film for a week, and you've got 40 minutes of film.
Right, yeah, they crunch
Make
it
it look
into
good. Don't show the medium, screwing up doing a reading. Like, oh, that's I'm not having a good day. We went out drinking last night. Okay, see if you can do something good tomorrow. You
Let me
know,
tell you something. I think that's priceless, that thing that you were telling me about, that you were doing that reading with a hangover.
yeah. And I was like, I want to try it. In fact, they're like, yeah, no, it doesn't work. Don't do it, folks.
That's great. That's to me, that was like, that's great. And I know I saw on your website that you mentioned something about the Dead Files.
Hmm.
Okay. And I haven't watched the Dead Files in a bit, but I was always watching the Dead Files, the format they had. I liked it. A lot of the shows, I liked their format.
Yeah, I did too. I really like their format the best.
Yeah.
Um, and and so I've interviewed people who are on that show,
Mm-hmm.
and those are the biggest YouTube video that just those interviews with those people. Like, okay, what was the aftercare? What happened?
Right, right. Yeah, because a lot of people always want to know what
Yeah,
happened.
what happened? I can't seem to get any more people to.
Because you know how at the end of the show they do like a little snippet, like the person did what we told them to
Yeah,
do, and this
but they
happened, or
ignored us, and they're still experiencing.
right? Yeah, exactly. So everybody always wants to know, like, what happened.
Yeah, what happened exactly? And yeah, so that I know it takes a week to film that for 40 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and I like the fact that don't tell me anything. And like I said, I don't want to know anything. Let's let me walk through you know, this POW camp in Vietnam, or the Teotihuacan pyramid, or the just let me pick up on it. And then the police officer, who's, they have everyone, the staff doing all the research, making him look like he's doing the research, but he'll present the data that, they found in files and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And so I like that concept, but they got to make it look pretty sharp and clean in 40 minutes, but they do have
Right.
this format, and they bring it together and they edit it to make it look great, because no one wants to see a show they're like, oh, they didn't do a very good job, did they? No.
Well, I understand as far as what he does, which is the research. Like, is there any historical tie-in to what she supposedly later on
Exactly.
picks up on?
Right.
Sometimes they find stuff, sometimes it's totally off left field.
Right. It's like, okay, there was a death, 3 blocks away, blah, blah, blah. Maybe she's picking up on that energy. Maybe she's a super sensitive empath, almost to the point where I think, too much. A bit. I just feel like she's a bit undisciplined, because she's a physical medium. She just kind of lets it. She just takes it all in, and it's just like it adversely affects her. And she's super sensitive. She's very talented. But I just thought, gosh, she's not just feeling the fire. She's jumping in, and I'm burning. I feel the burning on my skin.
Right, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
There's
it's
times where she's like physically
yeah.
actually
She's more of a physical medium versus just a mental medium, which is what I am.
but
She's a
that's gotta wear you down. I don't know. I'm just
It would.
assuming, but
Yeah, she's super sensitive, super emotional, and so she's going to be affected by all the trauma that she's experiencing and reporting on. She's taking it in, and I know she has cleansing ways and rituals,
mhm.
but it's tough. Yeah, she's super sensitive, so she's good to pick up on it, but she really suffered, by going through some of these places, because they were.
What do you have you ever done a reading, whether it was, and you've come across or encountered a spirit that I'm gonna use a nice word, unlikable, or that you're like, ugh.
Yeah, who was, I always say, who was nasty when they were alive.
Yes, and then you're like, okay,
They're
let me
not
grit my
nasty
teeth and just
now,
like,
but like, yeah, it's like, okay, they come in love. They're not still nasty because that was their human form. But I need to gather the information of their nasty personality so that you
hmm
know, yeah, that was my
right. That's what I'm saying.
Jack.
This is like,
Yeah, so
this
you
was a piece of work kind of
yeah, this
person,
one,
but
yeah, it's like, yeah, this is who I was. This is who I was, when I was alive, and you'll pick up on it. And they'll say,
hmm
okay. And they're like, why is this person here? And I'm like, let's find out. Let's see what kind of message this person has. And sometimes they come with a variety of messages, but mostly it's, forgiveness. So sorry.
right,
I take full blame. It can be anything. So
right,
they
right.
come with a powerful message. It's not like they're still that way on the other side, but you're picking up on who they were when they were alive. They're different now. I always like just to tell people.
Well, the reason why I ask is that to this person who's left behind, that maybe despite what the maybe it was a convoluted or difficult relationship. If you start telling them, "Oh, this person's wonderful and they've got wings," they're like, "Huh? Not
Mm,
really." They were like,
no, they were ugly. They were ugly to me, and they were ugly to other
right.
people. And okay, why the hell is he here? Well,
Or yeah, he wasn't such a nice guy, like
no, he was a horrible guy. He beat me, or this
yeah, exactly.
beat me. This person was drunk all the time. I was
Yes,
like, okay, that's who they were. Let's see why they've come forward. And I
right.
always present my intention is to bring these people forward, with love in the sense that, they're going to have a message, a nice message, rather than an evil message. Like I've never liked you. That's kind of I don't get those kind of messages. Like, hey, what do you want to say? Why are you here?
It's like,
Why are you here? And it's amazing when you do
yeah,
this work. It's healing. It's really healing work. It's
sure.
not like we're just bringing up, old nasty things from the past, only to say, yeah, that's Uncle Jack. He was
Right.
that person. He's a little different now, and this is somebody who's seen the light, so to speak.
hmm
So is now okay, trying to make
Yeah,
amends.
so do you get the other end of it where, and this is just me assuming, with this person that's passed on, for
Mhm.
lack of a better word, is looking or asking or wants forgiveness. How's that?
Absolutely, that's a very common one. It's a very common one. Absolutely.
Right.
Sometimes,
It's
yeah, yeah. So it's quite a bit, quite a bit. There's a lot of nasty. I mean, this one guy's mom and dad were just horrible people. I'm like,
mhm.
you were traumatized, and the fact that he heard apologies, not the same. They were different kind of apologies.
Right.
One was more sincere. The other one was not so lovingly sincere.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, and he was just like, trauma. He's been living with the trauma all his life, and then all of a
Right.
sudden, what do? You need time to process that.
Exactly. That's where I'm going with this, where you
Oof,
knew this person when they were alive as, like you said, whatever, they're
nasty,
horrible,
mean, yeah.
and you had maybe a lifelong difficult relationship with
And
them.
you still are suffering mentally from their,
Right. And you're like, yeah, and this spirit is telling you, I'm sorry. And I think
yeah,
you
you may
kind of
not,
needed his
yeah,
time to like get
yeah,
to the point where,
and you don't have to accept it. I always say you don't have to forgive them. Um,
right.
you can forgive, but you don't have to forget. That's what I meant. You
Right.
can forgive
Exactly.
them, but you don't have to forget what they've done. And some people like, I don't want to go there. I don't like, too much. Too bad. They apologized. I still pissed off at them. Okay,
Sure. Yeah.
fine. That's go forth. And then maybe as they grow next year, that ooh, I don't know. You just never know. You said it
Sometimes it
before.
just takes, like you said, it just takes time. It
It
just
takes
takes time
time.
for
Absolutely.
to that you, like you said, not that you forget, but you just accept this is with a
Yeah,
person.
yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. But when our job is to really paint them back to life, so when the message does come, it's a credible message because I've told you who this person was, what they did, how horrible they were, what were some of the things that they did that were horrible, what did they do to you? All this evidence that I had no idea, so that the message is credible. That's what we're going for, is to get as much evidence who they were, so when we provide a message, it's credible because we've already established credibility with painting them back to life, whether they were beautiful people, wonderful people, the love of your life, or the terror of your life.
Yeah. I hate to say it, but people, and I'm glad you bring that up because sometimes people, everybody thinks that all relationships, especially maybe when they go to a psychic or a medium, it's like the kumbaya moment. But a lot of times, relationships are difficult. Just because one of them dies, sometimes it leaves a lot of, unresolved things, especially if the one person like passes away unexpectedly. Because, you always think, if somebody's passing away, peace is made, let's say. But sometimes people don't get that chance. So I'm thinking, I wonder if they come back and they say, okay, I need to do we either one or the other or both complete what they maybe never had a chance to do when they were alive.
Right. And many times it's been, I loved you.
Yeah.
I never said it. I really wasn't good,
Yes.
but I really did love you, and I
Yep.
still do.
Yep.
Or the worst ones, where did you bury the money? I'll get that from the sitter. Like, what? What teach us this in school?
Yeah.
Where do well, I don't know. I don't want to know. So it's like,
Yeah.
well,
It's like, let's talk
I
about it.
say, give it a
Forget the
try.
love stuff. Okay, okay, you love me, I love you, great, but where'd you
Where did you hide that money when you left?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
so
Or where's the will?
where's that damn will? Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure that there's always the let's be practical about this.
it's pretty
Okay,
funny. Some
yeah,
of the
they're
things are
here.
pretty
Good.
funny.
Okay. They say they love you. Okay, great. Yeah, but
And I always tell people, they don't have to they don't have to speak English. We pick up on people. We're going to gather information without hearing actual words many times. So I could be pulling down somebody who never spoke English in their life,
okay, and they
or
communicate.
indigenous people from Mexico that didn't, or from, you know,
Anything.
Angkor Wat. Like they didn't speak
Yes.
English, but we can still gather it. It gets translated somehow in this
Yes.
in the reception.
Yes. Yes, like a universal language kind of thing.
Yeah, it's this universal language. It's not really spoken. It's not we're sitting there listening to the whole conversation and all, but we gather it many different ways to pull together the profile, pull together the information, their personality. You'll feel the personality. You'll know about this and that. So it's fascinating. So again, you got to put the work in, folks, to be a good
Yeah.
psychic or medium.
The field training kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not like you just pop
And you
out.
know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, Kevin, because people sometimes think that by reading books or watching shows, or whatever, that they become, for lack of a better word, an expert or they know it. And nothing takes the place of actual experience or field work. I
Right.
don't care how many, or even people that you talk to, you have to put in like what you said at the very beginning, you have to put in the hard work.
You
You have to make the
do.
mistakes.
You do. Use the books and the movies as inspiration to move you towards an area of interest. And then get training and find out people who are doing it and get trained the right way. It's like, okay, there are best practices out there. Make your life easier. Get with a good coach if you're going to want to develop. Just don't try to wing it. Wing it's going to take you, 10 times longer. You're going to have a lot of bad habits and all this other good stuff or bad stuff.
Sure. Well, but if you go by Hollywood, and I know it's for entertainment, they make you think that all psychics and mediums see the dead like walking around all over the place, and they might be thinking, "Why don't I see anybody?" In other words,
Yeah, clairvoyance, I said, is overrated. It's
yes, and it's
overrated.
like,
You can
yeah,
see something, but I'll see it differently if I'm also clairvoyant.
right,
But it's like we don't. I want to know who this spirit is. I want to be able to communicate. I can't do that by just seeing. I see an old lady in the corner.
right. That's what I'm saying. Yes,
Hey, I don't know her. I can't communicate. I have to use my other abilities to do that. It's
right.
just a starting point, and it's always like,
Hmm.
oh, this person is so clairvoyant. That's nice, but you
Yeah,
need the other
exactly. But
skill.
beyond then beyond the appearance, what?
Yeah, it's like, well, she never looked like that. Well, that's the way I get it for an old woman, sitting in a rocking chair. But that's the information that I was supposed to pull back, not, that's exactly what she looked like. That was my way of saying, I see a woman who really is quiet and I see this woman in a rocking chair, which means to me, this is somebody who is very calm and like to just kind of be by themselves and do things. And, not very super active. They weren't very social, whatever it may be, whatever I'm
Right.
going with. It's not that there's an old woman in a rocking chair. Well, she never looked like an old woman to me, you know.
Or you have maybe what you said. They knew this person like grandma, and then you're looking at grandma when she was in her heyday in 30, and
Mhm.
you're saying, "Hey, your grandma,"
Yeah, she's
because
this beautiful woman, like, she was never beautiful or skinny.
right, man, she used
That's
to
why I
close down the place.
stay
Really?
away from descriptions because we all change, don't we? Like, "Look at
Yeah,
my hair. I
exactly.
used to have nice hair."
Yeah, I know. It's like, yeah, you know what? There's things you might learn about your family member that you never
Yeah,
knew.
it's like, "Oh, goodness, she was really that wild and crazy?"
Yeah, exactly.
No.
But when I knew her, she used to bake cookies.
Yeah,
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 but
yeah, and if you tell me my grandmother was a great cook and like, no, my grandmother could not cook. So you have to be real careful. Get her personality, and then I'll say, "Yeah, you got her," because our personalities don't change.
yeah, of course, there's certain things about them that when you hear them, you're like, "Yep, that's the person." Yep.
Yeah, yeah, it's very clear. You're like, "Yeah, that's absolutely her." You'll get some real key things that are like, "Oh, we have no idea." Some of the things we get are like, you just gotta go with it. You gotta trust your gut, and that's the hard thing when you're developing. Oh god, alright, well, and you start processing, "No, there's no way that person could be that way." Yeah, they were, and that's exactly who they were.
Yes. I have enjoyed this so much, Kevin.
So I
For my podcast listeners, what is your website so that they can follow up and look
it
at what you
is
do?
it varies everything for me, all my social media is Kevin Paul Psychic Medium.com, on Instagram, on YouTube, it's all Kevin Paul Psychic Medium.
Okay, so they
Yeah,
can find you
you
wherever.
can find me wherever, I'm everywhere.
And on your website, do you have you have the information because I saw it about the courses and
Great,
everything
yeah,
that you
there's a
do,
whole
right?
section on, the Academy of Real Magic. If you're interested in finding out what your abilities are and developing them, I will be a really good coach for you, and it's only just for you can do as many as 5 to 10 sessions, and then I say, "Go forth, find other teachers," but now you know the vocabulary, you know how to describe who you are, you've practiced, you know what your abilities are, and you know you've got a lot of work to do. Find other teachers to help you. Maybe there's a
Sure.
different technique that one does. You can combine it with this. So yeah, that's everything is on my website and the YouTube channel. Those are the two fun ones. The YouTube is really for fun education, mystical things. If you don't want to be trained or anything,
Okay.
that's a good place to go. But my website is for scheduling services and learning about how to get trained and a lot of other things. E-learning, if you can do some e-learning.
Sure.
So it's all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah,
I
the
love
magic of the internet.
it. It is. We didn't have that back in the 80s.
No, I tell everybody, the once upon a time you had to pay to develop film.
Yeah. And
It's like,
I had to sit in the dark to gather information on spirituality.
yeah, exactly. It was like, yeah, either that or exactly, or yeah, the most of the thing it was in-person training. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's invaluable. So
Yes.
Arlene, it's been a pleasure. I didn't
Yeah.
know you from Adam or Eve, and I'm so glad that you reached out to me.
Yes.
How did
I
you
mean, that,
find me, by the way?
oh my God, Kevin, you could kill me right now, and I can't type because I'm always
I'm so
listening to
memorable.
interviews, listening to what they
Yeah, I know.
say, and I sometimes I look at so much content, and then also sometimes I put the person's name on a list because I'm booked. Okay, for so far in advance, I go if I try to book this person now, you know, let me wait until I'm closer to open dates, and then by the time I come around to it, I just know, oh, I, I got their website. This is a great person to speak to.
I'm always
And
curious how people find me. So
I'm,
you found me
more
somehow,
than likely, I
and I
saw
appreciate
you on YouTube,
well, I appreciate you.
but it was wonderful.
So your
Great.
format is is it just radio or is this a
No, this is a video, and then I release a podcast
nice,
version and I release a video version.
excellent.
Okay. So I'll send you links for everything so you can
Oh,
have it.
and
And like I said, I'll put a
yeah,
link to your website in the credits of the show on
cool.
everything and everything that I distribute, whether it's the podcast or the video version, all my audience knows that they can find me everywhere. Um,
Name.
and even on my newsletter, I always put links for all my guests, where they can be. But that's why I still ask you for the podcast listeners
Mhm.
so that they have it too. Again, thank you
Excellent.
so much. It has
My
been absolutely
pleasure.
wonderful. Take
I
care,
enjoyed
Kevin.
it. Thank you, Marlene.
Yes, very much so. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
He was great. He was. I tell you, can you tell my favorite part was giving a psychic reading when you have a hangover? I'm sorry, I have to laugh because can you imagine? And I'm not that. Let me tell you something. I'm not a drinker, so really my experience with hangovers is very minimal, and it was when I was very young. But you know that you have lasting, memories of something like I never want to have that experience again. And life, just life in general, is difficult and like irritating. But I can't imagine trying to do a psychic reading or any type of thing like that. Oh man, that was what a great story that was, you know. And of course, what he says, and I understand exactly what he was talking about. That uh, when you give readings to people, and let's face it, somebody's coming to you as a psychic, or well, in this case, a medium, having to do with a loved one. But let's face it, you don't go to a psychic and pay them or whatever it is to get a reading on your difficult neighbor or on the uncle you never who was an SOB. Yeah, usually when people go is because there's something there that they need to connect with. So I understand what he's saying that how you how can I say express things has to make an impact, especially if I imagine if maybe the death is recent. Um, that people, like he was saying, an impact versus when. That's why when he said that thing about that lady getting hit by a train, I was like, she what? She did, and I can see, I totally understand, like, you know, um, yeah, feel an impact because let's face it, the trauma to a human body getting hit by a train has got to be pretty ugly. So, yeah, you're not gonna say, "Yeah, I saw her go in, like, 3 different pieces because when the train ran her over," like, hell, nobody's forget it. You're not gonna have much of a clientele. But I understand totally what he's saying, like, how do you talk to people who might be grieving a lot and say the right thing and at the same time convince them that this is the person that they're asking to speak to or wanting to connect to without traumatizing your client? That's gotta be, uh, you gotta be real careful. I can see why you need training in that because, and some people are born more, what's the word I'm looking for? Are more cautious or more careful. And then there's other people that by their nature sometimes they're a little bit more brutal with how they deliver messages. They just talk. And I'm sure everybody's met them, people that they'll like, look, they'll say stuff. And you're like, okay, yeah, all right. Hmm. And then there's other people that they know how to finesse things. And but for something like that, under those scenarios where people are like, I want you to convince me that the person you're saying is communicating with you is my loved one, but at the same time, I don't want you to tell me something, let's say, so horrible because of the way they died. Just as a way to convince me, because let's face it, everybody's got sensibilities. So, yeah, and I agree with him. And I've said it before, like in everything, not only psychic, anything that you do, is how much do you practice it and have uncomfortable scenarios where you make mistakes, you're wrong, you're, um, like you've now it's like he said, it's a learning curve of how do you find the right thing to, how can I say it? And I do agree with him, how what you see individually through your filters of your mind is different from anybody else's. So that even, let's say somebody's mentoring you, let's say like he does, what you see might mean something totally different from person to person. And I've always used this example. You tell somebody, I see a tiger. One person will say, oh, that's a beautiful animal. It's very lithe and it stalks, and it's an this beautiful animal full of power, blah 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 blah. And then you tell tiger to another person, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is a predator. It's gonna eat you. It's can tear you apart." You know, a tiger, yeah, a tiger will prey on a human. In other words, what we think of for the exact same thing, filtered through the lenses of that person's experience or personality, could mean totally different things. And I imagine that that's what he helps budding psychics develop, is like, how do you understand the language of how your abilities work so that you interpret it to mean, to interpret what it is that you're seeing correctly. And again, the only way I can think of that you fine tune that is do it over and over again. And then at some point, you'll realize, like he said, wow, whenever I see X, Y, and Z, this is what it means. And then, by the way, I better, like, how do I, depending on who's in front of you, how do I, how do I say this so, like what he said, oh, I think like this person might be involved in a bad accident. Okay, am I gonna like traumatize this person and tell them, hey, better be careful? How do I say this so that, hey, be careful, you need to be more vigilant, whatever, or don't, make sure you leave on time to your appointment. Something along those lines, like, hello, read in between the lines. You tell them, but you don't tell them. How's that? So that they don't run screaming away from you like, ha, ha, ha. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, very interesting. I really loved it. Again, I'm gonna have a link his um to his to his website. I'm gonna do it to the website in the credits of the show, because from there you have links to everything, and he has blog posts, and it's a lot of interesting information on his website. And of course, not only he has a training, but he also has the readings. And again, please come back every week. I have a lot of interesting guests just like him and others lined up. All right. Um, just different things, something to make your weird little heart happy. And thank you again for spending this time with me. Till next time, take care.